Okay, I do want to stick to because that's what we're doing, even though we've had that week together. And I guess I do want to just go back over Strata once again. You know, social strata is the stuff of politics and, you know, some of the issues that are swirling around a lot, many of us at the moment. So they're the issues of values, the world we're born into in terms of class and politics and race and gender, and what we do with that. Communication strata is how we effectively get our message, know what we want to say it and have it received. Communication strata is also all about how we're receiving other people's communication, and all our work around passive listening really lies in communication strata. And as I say that, you know, passive listening sort of creates the soul of Pellin, that means we put a great deal of emphasis on communication. Emotional strata is that which is the world of therapy, you know, where we were during the days of the program this week. How we relate to the pain and well-being of our past, but I guess particularly how we relate to the pain of our past, and does it cripple us, or can we do something with it so we move ahead? The middle of the pendulum is evaluation strata. It's about decision making, setting goals. I like to talk about setting nourishing and realistic goals, and how we're using advisors. There's a lot of how we let in feedback that lies in evaluation strata as well as communication strata. Accomplishment strata is how we get things done. In terms of this work, it's as the pendulum and memory links are very much part of emotional strata, the triangle and accepted and rejected efforts are very much part of accomplishment strata. You know, can we evaluation strata setting the goals, accomplishment strata is whether or not we reach them. Perseverance strata is about courage. It's about handling diversity. It's about handling rejection, failure, disappointment, abandonment, being in hurtful situations and surviving. And it's a particular part of Pellin that I don't think you find that much elsewhere formalized the way we formalize perseverance strata. And accomplishment strata is being able to take in the mystery of it all, our relationship to a higher power, religion, spiritual paths, a belief in science, a belief in history, a belief in art. You know, some people's awareness strata will be that the thing that survives most prominently in the world is art, okay? Even religions change, but art sort of perseveres, stays. I didn't mean, yeah, even using the word perseverance. You know, I go through ups and downs and destruction, but some people would say that art lasts more fundamentally than anybody else, than anything else. I'm just using that as an example of, you know, trying to articulate awareness strata as something that has a wide range and yet has a mystery to it. And I guess there is, within awareness strata, within a, you know, high awareness strata, there's an ability to understand and appreciate other people's awareness strata. I mean, to me, there's always something quite shocking and limiting the way scientists, not everyone, but a lot of scientists, particularly best-selling authors, have to rubbish religion. They just can't stop themselves, okay? Rather than being able to say, okay, you know, in our terminology, my awareness strata is science, your awareness strata is God. Can we respect each other? So I guess I appreciate you bearing with me. I just kind of wanted, Mary. Yeah.
I just wanted to give a lovely example of what you just said. I remember going into a Pakistani, therefore Muslim restaurant, and with my friends, and the restaurateur or manager asked us, and do you believe in God? And we said we believed in a feminine God, and their faces lit up just because they believed in God and we believed in God.
Yeah. There was, I heard that, which meant a lot to me when I heard it, because thinking this sort of through. There's a very best-selling author on evolution. His name's Dawkins. I can't remember his full name. Doesn't roll off my tongue.
Stephen Hawkins, do you mean?
Hmm?
Do you mean Stephen Hawkins or somebody else?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Richard Dawkins.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. And I heard him, he's on television and radio a lot in England. And I remember him debating with a couple of other people. I think there were one other scientist and two people who were coming on from a religious side. And the other scientists, and he's going on and on and on about science. You know, science proves things, and that's what's there. And the other scientist, I wish I knew her name, but she's fairly well known. And she wasn't from London, which is the sort of cultural center of England. She was from Birmingham, which is a bit not so intellectually pretentious, let me put it that way. So she's this lady from Birmingham who was a scientist, who, you know, she was at the university. And she just came in and said, well, I understand all that, Steve. Elizabeth, remind me his name again. Richard, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I understand all that, Richard, but I think you have to take on that there's not much warmth in science, okay? That's what he said. And I felt he'd made a huge statement, okay? and he was stopped. He was stopped for a moment. So I guess in our particular model, you know, a little bit of the whole truth. I guess we can contain and hold these various issues. Someone said here recently, I think it was you, Elizabeth, that, you know, getting involved in Pellin, you felt there was room in it for a bunch of different stuff. You said it better than that, but that's what I took from it. And I really felt the same thing in a way I got from David Pellin. I think I've said this before here, because he called his work the activated philosophy of human behavior. So it was a philosophy of human behavior. And within that, I felt the room to sort of bring in all my bits and pieces, my interest in this and my interest in that. It didn't have to be a discipline, oh, that's outside psychology, or that's outside psychotherapy, or the particular sort of internal professional academic debates you get in my field of work, where I spent my life. And I felt he just gave me the permission almost, that's what I took. Yeah, we can look at all these different things because they're part of human behavior. And I think it comes down to, because as you know, I'm very interested in politics. And, you know, I know some people, and I had in-laws at one point who, well, I'm not interested in politics, it's all rubbish. And I sort of want to say, okay, go live in Syria. You know, the politics and how we govern ourselves fundamentally affects our lives. And, you know, that's happening in America, you know, with a vividness that's not been around since 9/11, and a vividness that's hardly ever been around. I mean, what I mean by vividness, I mean the images that are there. And I think those images will last as long and perhaps longer than the 9/11 images. They're just so, well, they're dramatic, to coin one phrase. So in coming into sort of today's topic, which is staying with this English phrase, 5 a day, that came out of, and you know, I had forgotten, Nikki, that it came from the government. You know, you need to eat 5 different fruit and vegetables a day to have a healthy diet. So you need to put these things into yourself. And I guess wanting to approach Pellin, which has, and because of what, you know, 16th of June, you know, next year, 50 years, that's 50 years. And within that 50 years,
there's a very high-pitched intermittent beeping that's going off. Does anybody know what that is?
I've heard it too, and I was wondering what it was. I was worried something was going on here.
It can only be Peter because we've all been muted.
yeah, I wonder what it is. Probably some alarm going off or something. I can't hear it. Anyway, let me just look around. You stay with that. Talk about that while I look for it.
Can anyone remember what that was? I'm so tired, I completely can't remember what he just said.
Well, he was sort of talking about the topic of the 5 a day
Right.
and how it might relate to sort of the Pellin toolkit, I assume.
Yeah, he didn't get to that bit, did he? He was talking
No.
about 5 a
Uh,
day.
I think it's funny that I'm actually aware of the 5 a day because of, I think, a Canadian sign language video series that we all listened to a lot of when my niece Shiny was little, because we were learning how to communicate with her. So, and they had a song about how it's got to add up to 5 a day, and they do sign language during the song. So that's just my memories about that.
Yeah.
Does that mean they've got the 5 a day thing in Canada, or were they borrowing it from the UK?
I honestly don't know. I think that it sounds like one of those things that Canada and the UK would tend to share.
Okay.
Is it gone?
It hasn't come back since
Because
I mentioned it, but it's been intermittent. I'll let you know if it does.
I wonder if something outside, like a car alarm going off or something.
No,
Because
it's
I can't hear in the house.
high pitched and nearby, isn't it? Does everybody else think it like that?
Yes, that's how I'm experiencing it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's how I did. It sounds like, I don't know if this is the case, it sounds like what happens when a fire alarm is the battery's getting low.
Yeah, it does.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't have anything like that, but I wonder, I thought it might be an alarm call, because sometimes the high pitch I don't hear.
Anyway, it stopped for now.
Okay.
So it stays that way.
Yeah, so thank you for letting me make that particular, and I know slightly repetitious introduction, because I guess I want the, I do want Mary. Yeah.
Well, I just did a quick Google search as we haven't quite restarted. And it says the 5 a day campaign is based on advice from the World Health Organization.
Wow.
So it's worldwide, depending on who takes it up.
Yeah.
I've just got the signal that I have to move. So I'll make Cynthia the host in case Cease comes.
Okay.
Hang on, let me mute myself so I can hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to begin to sort of, let me just back up a little bit. We've got this long history. We've been incredibly consistent. We haven't changed with changing interests in the field. A lot of schools of thought and practice feel they've got to incorporate that which has become new and interesting to everybody, and we haven't done that. But therefore, we do need to find new ways to make it interesting. And I guess it's sort of slightly coming from that I want the approach of, what we do is suggest things that would be nourishing and beneficial for people to have in their lives on a daily basis. And for the sake of clarity and a little sort of slogan, we've adopted the 5 a day slogan for good eating, good physical nourishment. We're talking about good emotional nourishment. And however, given 5 a day, However, at the same time, I think that the metaphor of a toolbox is probably the best one for us. You know, they are tools and you can pick them up and use them when you want to. Maybe there's a way to parallel that with these are things that would be good for you to have in your life on a daily basis. And if you're living, if you're at a time of life when you're feeling good and happy and fulfilled, you will probably have these things in your daily life. But they'll be there in another way, or they'll be there in other words than the words we're suggesting in Pellin. But yeah, show me an elderly person who's pretty content with their life, or really content with their life. I'll show you someone who's got sustaining purpose. So, almost always there, always there. So I guess I want to use this to maybe just, we can relate it to Strata, but just ask people, and I'll go first, what of those things? Yeah, let's just sort of arbitrarily come up with that 5 a day. You know, calm of the pendulum, feelings of accomplishment, accepted action, and awareness.
True rest.
Again?
True rest.
True rest and an understanding of life forces. No, just sort of there, that's 5 a day. And maybe I can do something with 5 a day because, you know, 5 vegetables, got to have different vegetables and different fruit. But there's lots of them, aren't there? You could be, yeah. And in some countries, I don't know if it's true where you are, Mary. Used to be. I was there for a very, very long time ago. You know, fruit and vegetables were seasonal. With supermarket fruit and vegetables aren't seasonal anymore, you know, all over the world. So there would have been traditional cultures whose fruit and vegetables were seasonal, who would have had built in their own 5 a day. And it would depend on seasons, I'm sure. Because there still is quite a, even in the supermarkets, in the Cilento, where I run the Italy program for this year, there's still very, very much a seasonal availability of fruit and vegetables, there's no question. I mean, you don't get peaches in the winter, and there's a season for artichokes, and there's even a festival for artichokes. So there's something about that and the diversity of fruit and vegetables. But you know, what the World Health Organization coming on and saying, okay, you know, make it straightforward, 5 a day, because that's going to help people all over the world be healthy. But there's flexibility in it. I guess we could maybe use this particular way of saying it. That, yeah, if my day's going wrong, of the 5 a day, what's not there. I think that might be the way to make this sort of bit of metaphor and methodology work. So I want something these are good things to have in your life. Cynthia.
I have something that's kind of a carryover from Virtue and Pellin Italy that I think I can relate both the 5 a day to the Strata. And it's something that I just had a really big insight into this morning. Is it okay if I share it?
Oh yeah, please.
Well, anyways, when I was trying to get in touch, and that part of me that I had discovered in the memory link that can't speak, or that I thought couldn't speak, you know, I was having a hard time getting in touch with her, and I'm trying to get her to speak. This morning, one thing I found out, actually she can speak. She just doesn't speak English. She's the part that learned Japanese, and she can speak Japanese. And in fact, her Japanese is better than mine. You know, I mean, I know that seems very strange. It's still in me, but her Japanese is better than mine. And one of the ways, you know, and I kind of even asked her, do you want to speak English? She's like, no. She can understand, but she really doesn't. And one of the things that I realized as a part of this whole thing, and one thing I haven't been getting enough of lately, in part because the person I speak Japanese with regularly has been sick lately, and we haven't been able to, but I absolutely need to have Japanese in my life every day, and I need to have a lot of it. And it was just this morning that I realized she does speak Japanese, and it's also a way I can communicate with that part of myself. I can sort of, you know, and I mean, I guess it's not silly, but you know, from what we're doing with chair work, but just even like going in and saying, okay, so what do you want? Do you want to do this? And she'll tell me in Japanese, yeah, jitsu wa shitaku nai. In fact, I really don't want to do this. You know, that there's a sort of, and that was very, that was just very freeing. And so this morning, because I had a bad day yesterday, this morning I just did a lot of stuff. I read in Japanese, I watched TV in Japanese, and I felt much better. So that's where this whole story goes.
Now I really appreciate the story. It touches, when you're telling that story, I really just had this thought that, because my Italian is very, very rudimentary, you know, I'll just leave it at that for now. The story behind that or whatever. But I had this, I just had this thought that if I had fluent Italian, I think there'd be a part of me that would be very, very different. Okay? Just very different. Yeah. I think the people that might speak, if Peter was speaking fluent Italian, or I don't even mean fluent Italian, you know, considerable, that would be different. So that intrigued me, sort of motivated me.
Can I say something? So anyway, I'm just leave it as a rhetorical question in a way, but I'm just really intrigued to know why was it Japanese, and was there somebody sometime in your childhood somebody referred to Japanese as being something incomprehensible or something, and something in your unconscious went, aha, I'll have that, I'll save that for later. Because it strikes me, just because of things I've discovered, I mean, after donkey's years of therapy, and just lately other new things come, like so would it have been February last year, I guess, no, the year before, whenever my cousin's wedding was, February 2019. So I found out some information to do with my grandfather's funeral, stuff I never, bits and pieces I never knew before. And it meant that I was able to put things together. It's astonishing, things that, like, it made me go, oh, that's why. I forget the different bits or what it was related. I'm extremely allergic to that birthday song that everybody sings at people. Ugh. And I never tell anyone when my birthday is, because to prevent anyone singing that at me. And I always had this allergic reaction. It's such a dirge. And that came to me that oh yeah, that's it, that new information that I remember a few years ago I worked out, that will have been because of my sister's 8th birthday, will have been waiting for my grandfather's funeral, and that will have been sung. So this new information that I only got in the other February was that my grandmother was also there living with us in the house. So it's like my mum and my grandmother, her mum, would have both been horrendously bereaved in a very, very depressed, unable to grieve way, singing that terrible song at my 8-year-old sister. And it's like, anyway, I'm just saying, it's fascinating. All these years later, you can get a little snippet of information that goes, aha, that's why.
I could tell you how it came about, and it was a lot of it just happened to be like serendipity. But a friend of mine was real into Japanese, and she started studying, a very close friend, and studying Japanese. And when she was doing this, I realized that a lot of the things I like to play with, like games and stuff like that, were translations from Japanese. And as part of that, and actually I did it to help her, I guess I instinctively thought the best way to learn is to teach, to help her learn. She taught, my thought was I would learn so she can teach me as she's learning. Well, it turns out, and I think this relates to the mute part of me, aside the language, just there's a part of me that can be myself. I don't know why, and my background is Swedish, not Japanese, but I can be myself in a way I can't be in English, ever, I don't think. But what happened was, in terms of with the mute part of myself, and I have very clear, is this friend I had a real hard time learning to talk. I learned to listen, I learned to read, but getting me to talk was really difficult. And one of the things that she did, she was kind of strict with me, but also with me, she said, you know what, we're going to have to do it. At first she made me talk, and she was very patient with me. We had to do it 5 minutes a day where I had to talk in Japanese. And then that grew and grew, and eventually got to the point where when both of our Japanese was well enough, if you can't say it in Japanese, you can't say it. And that helped me get through that fear of talking. And I'm very grateful, because it also gave me a confidence, even in English, that I never had. But the sort of making me learn how to speak and to speak. Just so now I've got, and I also have very positive memory links in Japanese now about somebody being patient with me and getting me through that. So I think that's also part of it. So I hope
Yeah. Oh, it might have started with her just because you happen to have this friend that's Japanese, or there may have been way back some original thing somebody referred to. Because why Japanese? Why not Chinese? Why not French? Why not? There's something about why that.
Well, it has to be with the awareness strata, and it's part of the spiritual group I'm in, and also and going through. And one of the things two things about the Japanese culture is, one, it's probably the only culture from the East that westernized on its own terms. So there's still a very strong tradition. It wasn't conquered. It wasn't, you know, Japan made the decision to westernize. So there's still a very deep traditional thing. And there's also a very deep respect for femininity, and femininity in a way that's not, and not in terms of feminist, but like actual femininity, the whole concept of being polite, being gentle, being enjoying beauty, and that, you know, the things we associate with being feminine, and also the tradition, and very traditional. So that culture was a culture we could draw from in terms of awareness strata, and strata in terms of
Okay.
spirituality.
So it was kind of a researched thing in a way.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had natural affinity. I mean, I realized when in part of the group, I started realizing that, my goodness, most of the stuff I like is actually stuff that had been translated from Japanese, and I hadn't been aware of it.
Wow.
Well, it's very nice. It's also very it's very, you know, when you translate things from Japanese to English, it always sounds much more cynical. Just the whole language is much more. It's hard to explain. It's not, you know, I don't want to be bashing English, because that's, you know, especially we're all English speakers. But there's a difference in the social strata. There's a difference in the culture, where there's there's a sense that, you know, people can be trusted. You know, you know, if a lot of times, if you were to translate things from Japanese, like word for word into English, it would sound so hopelessly naive that we're like, you know, it's just, and there's, I'm not saying that, you know, I don't want to have this interpreted in a way that I'm, you know, there's all sorts of bad things coming from Japan too. And there's, you know, it's not like, but there's there's just this thread that's still there that seems to have been quashed in the West, or at least how I perceive it. So I'm not, you know, I'm a little nervous. I'm going a little too far, but
no, there's something, the name probably faded a bit. But there's
Sorry, what faded?
The name Alan Watts.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure it's Alan Watts. And he was an English clergyman who became a hippie and went to San Francisco. He became beatnik before hippie, and went to San Francisco and wrote a lot of, became interested in psychotherapy. And he felt his sort of purpose was to take Western thinking to Japan, and Japanese thinking to the West. I mean, specifically, I think it was San Francisco to Kyoto and back. Okay. He was very influential on Gestalt therapy. Very influential on me. So there is a direct link from passive listening to Zen Buddhism as brought by Alan Watts from Japan to San Francisco. Just an absolute direct influence. I just wanted to share that with you. And one of his books is called, it might be called Psychotherapy East to West. But anyway, Alan Watts, easy to find. And he was a very entertaining speaker. He was such a good speaker that at times he regarded himself as a bit of a charlatan. But his thinking was really, really solid and influential, really influential. Yeah. And I appreciate you bring that back, because, I mean, I'd mentioned that in passing over the years, but I hadn't really pinned down that that was a direct influence on Pellin. And a lot of the, I hope, I get across the sort of feel for Pellin that we don't have all the answers, and I might be going to blah, blah, blah. And, you know, him saying he was a bit of a charlatan, a bit of a showman, a certain sort of looseness. It probably came from him more than anyone else. And for me, that linked to what I can feel as an outsider in AA meetings, okay? Certain sort of, yeah, we're all here, and something about, because he did something which I felt came from Zen, Japanese Zen. It was about, you know, let's not take ourselves too seriously. It's that picture of Albert Einstein with sticking his tongue out. You know, someone asked him what's the meaning of the world, and he sticks his tongue out at them. Just certain sort of looseness.
I just have to call back.
That comes directly into that's social strata. You know, that belongs there, and the particular sort of link from social strata to awareness strata. It can be really quite interesting. But, well, I'm saying it here, aren't I? You know, I was in Vancouver. I was very much part of, you know, what, and embraced sort of West Coast culture. There were those times, you know, the 60s, when the West Coast of North America contained all those solutions the world ever needed. Yeah, so, you know, there's a sort of nice, playful, and yet very serious connection between social strata and awareness strata. They feed each other very well. I just want to comment a bit on what you said about, because it's an example I use, an example I used in developing the material. That's called resistance to nourishing change. And yeah, I will schedule that for the next series starting a week today. Because that is a sort of contained element on its own. And what resistance to nourishing change is the part of us that could change but won't. Okay. You know, the image I have is like there's a hanging fruit on a tree, and we could reach out and pick it, but we won't. You know, we'll stay in our hut, put it simply. And it's very often the case that where resistance to nourishing change starts from, it's something that once worked for us, okay? Like when, and it's an example I use in it, I guess that's why I was struck by what you said. Yeah, because I use the example, you know, a child growing up learns the way to survive is simply not to say anything. And the hypothetical example I use, you know, a child in an abusive family, but 5 siblings, you know, the way to stay out of struggle is just not say anything. And it worked to survive in that a bad situation, then later in life, this person cannot say things in an intimate situation. And yet the resistance to nourishing change is sort of the abilities in us. Right? The ability is really in me to be organized. It just is. A whole lot of different ways. But, you know, in resistance to nourishing change, there's a certain stubborn, to use the tools, certain sort of stubborn attraction to hurt. And then unconscious and also stubborn callous around how that attraction to hurt and the hurt we get into hurts other people. Anyway, that's a material on the forum for, that's an introduction to next Sunday, okay? Put it that way. But you using that example just sort of brought that up for me. Yeah, and I think mine is that if I wasn't organized, or if I was sort of doing something wrong, not getting stuff together, Mummy and Daddy would come in and look after it. You know, I had a happy childhood. You know, there's nothing. But sort of I learned to be over needy, okay? You know, I almost learned to have this element of sort of irresponsibility. It worked for me as a kid, it was lovely. Then we take it forward, and I guess that's where therapy comes in and emotional strata comes in. You know, that part of my past is holding me back. And then it's coming in, trying to hold the theme, it's coming in with, okay, where is accepted and rejected effort and the triangle about that? That one. You know, how can I have that as one of my 5 a day for a while? Yeah. Or how can I have taking a risk about communicating with somebody? You know, taking a risk about saying to someone, hey, I'm in trouble here with this. That's communication style. Do you want to come in and talk, Elizabeth?
Gosh. I mean, I think what Cynthia shared was really powerful. I've been thinking over the Pellin Tools and the 5 a day, and the sheer honest truth is I've been mulling over for a long time how the Pellin Tools could fit into a game. Yeah. And right now, the way I'm visualizing it is a role-playing game where your abilities are your strata. And so, you know, those give you your bonuses on your die rolls and all of that. And the question is, what would be a compelling setting for something like this?
Did I say something about that?
Sure.
There's a reason it took my breath away way back in the beginning, which was before there were computer games. I think I really had the ambition, and we did a bit of it, but to develop a board game that was about the Pellin Tools, okay, you know, a board game like
Mm-hmm.
Monopoly. So when you said that, I just thought, wow.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say, and I did quite a bit on the next one, because we're in this small hill village called Montecorte, and one of our biggest friends there, his name was Feluccio. That was his name. That was his short name. And I sort of wrote half a musical that was called Ciao Feluccio. Okay. And it was set in this village. So coming in with something like that, just yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about memory
Well,
links. Takes me
well, the
way
way I
back.
pictured it
You know, let's
was
do
like
it.
a tabletop role-playing game, you know, with pencil and paper and dice. But, you know, there has been a huge resurgence in the popularity of board games, which the pandemic has put a dent in, but we're not done with it yet.
Mhm.
You know, when people are meeting more, they will be going back to the board games.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's still very much possible. It just is. So that's fun. And that's just what I've been thinking.
That, you know, I know I'm a, what's the word I want? Bit of a naggy teacher. I'll use the word naggy. You know, that's real evaluation strata and accomplishment strata. Sort of bang in there. And perseverance strata sort of comes in because, yeah, you know, let's try for this. Let's really try for this. Against all odds. You're on the West Coast, startup country. And when I developed, was working on the board game, at that time I wasn't working with kids, you know. That came some decades later. But when I started working with kids, and some of the first bits of it, there's this, just to tell you this story, it's a very, very, it's a bit complicated, okay? But there's this very strange thing in Canada. They changed the Canadian Constitution so the Queen was no longer the head of state. And it had some fancy legal term, I can't remember. But that's what happened. You know, this happened. Different sort of governmental system on this level. Somehow or other, there's some loophole in it. This is a true story. There's some loophole in it. So, child prostitutes could not be taken into care, or the people who were running them could not be prosecuted unless they were observed in the sexual act. I have no idea where this loophole happened, but all of a sudden there was this explosion of child prostitution in Vancouver, in the high-rise part of Vancouver. It was weird. It was just weird. And it took them, you know, I don't know, 6 months to tidy it up or something. It probably took them 3 or 4 months to realize it was happening. But, you know, it's inconceivable. Well, the thing itself was inconceivable, but someone seeing the opportunity was can't conceive. I met some of these kids. I was working with some of these kids, and they said, "Why? You know, look at what I got. I've got this apartment. Why should I listen to you? Really scary, terrifying, just terrifying. I thought at that time, one of the ways to get kids is, but now it's games. It's got to be something like that to come in with them. And yeah, music and games still worked. Very, very strange thing. I've never seen anything like it. Very strange. Yeah.
Different kind of scenario altogether. There's a comedian a few nights ago talking about, I don't know how he got into it, but board games when he was a child. And he said, you know, the most popular one was a game called Monopoly. And the audience started laughing because it's like, we all suddenly realised, that's terrible. It's like, I'd never noticed that. And then he's saying, well, the first thing that's the problem with the game Monopoly is it's called Monopoly, you know, not like Ponzi scheme or something. And then he just did this whole list of what a terrible concept this is as a board game for children. So then this idea of, you know, a Pellin board game, it's like the antithesis somehow of Monopoly, which is where, so it would be not about material life force, it's about, I don't know, I can't even think beyond that, but it's about everything healthy somehow. And that's, yeah, gathering mental health would be winning, something like that.
Well, and I was thinking as the role-playing game, because I used to play those. I mean, I do play them, but I used to play them in college. I played the D&D and all the others. And I was just picturing what a learning tool it could be if, you know, you rolled up a character that was different from yourself, that had like a high communication strata and a low, and you have to sort of role play that you were that person. And how well you could sort of, like, I could even see like somebody who has a low communication strata pretending like they had a high one, and that actually ended up elevating their communication strata in real life. So I just had this beautiful image of that. So
Yeah. And I think there's a whole lot of social stuff up there. And in terms of social strata, and I don't quite know where this fits into theory, but I've got a sort of whole lot of, I don't know what you call them, sort of memory links that around games that are from my kids and grandkids. They're not sort of mine, but I guess I've just got really fond memories of different places I'd take, you know, Gabe or Nico or Danae. Of course, they wanted to go somewhere where they could play games, right? I can't even remember what they were called. In Italy, a bar would have some computer games attached to it. Or, I mean, this was before smartphones.
Arcade?
Take it.
Are you talking about an arcade?
I couldn't hear you again.
Oh, sorry. Mary, were you saying something?
No.
Well, I'm trying to tell Peter that after losing connection while I'm driving, on this phone, I'm now on a new Zoom app. I can't really hear you when you haven't got these earbuds on. Very fuzzy and indistinct. So it may be too near the end to bother, but it's just a piece of information. Doing all this effort to stay connected, I can't hear.
I wonder if I can turn up, Mary. No, I can't.
That's when you're closer, it's a bit better, Peter. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
For the moment, I'll wave if it goes fuzzy. Sorry, Elizabeth, about interrupting your point.
No.
I'll mute myself because I've stopped near traffic.
Yeah, Mary, you come up with something really important because I guess this is just such a new world to me. I don't know whether, I don't check whether, you know, the sound level's right for everyone, and I need to. Yeah.
It isn't the volume, just to be clear. It's the fact that when you're speaking through earbuds and the microphone's so near, it's clearer, not just louder.
Oh, okay.
The laptop can manage it, and the
Okay.
phone's not.
Let's
Nick is
experiment.
managing it, but she's on a landline, and I'm not on a landline, so that might be the difference.
Yeah, let's.
And I might have to move again anyway, even though it's close to finishing, because I'm going to stew. I'm going to get redder and redder and go up in a puff of smoke in the heat.
Yeah, we'll just, I can't find my earplugs quickly, so I won't go for that now. Okay, now. Yeah. So, I think you were saying something, Elizabeth, and I probably interrupted you.
Oh, I was just saying, was the word you were looking for arcade? ARCADE.
Yeah, totally the word was arcade. Thank you. Even in Italian, it was arcade. This, you know, these were really small towns, so sometimes the bars had the games as well.
Mm-hmm.
But mainly it was arcade. Yeah, thanks.
Anyway, just bringing in sort of. Can I come in with an observation?
Memory links there. Yeah, those totally different set of memory links that are just me absorbing something from my kids, because I was taking them to where they wanted to go and then where they'd meet their friends, and they needed coins at that time, or you paid someone, I don't know, different. I guess it was world that came and passed very quickly into something else. You know, it didn't, but my kids were absolutely into it. Yeah. So just being able, I think it's useful to be able to, is that better, Mary?
I can understand what you're saying. It's a bit fuzzy still, but I can understand, which is great.
Okay.
Can I make well, that was good. Can I make a little observation when I was first connected?
Yeah. Your connection is a bit scatty.
Yeah, it's because I'm trying to phone in, and it's got a lot of bars, but it doesn't seem to be doing too well. Anyway, if you can't hear me, I'll just shout out. But I just wanted to say to Cynthia, I did hear the story about your mute little girl and the Japanese, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but you're completely fluent. You didn't. You just went from A to Z in your narrative, and you didn't have any hesitations. And I thought that was really curious and interesting, because you were talking about communication and learning to speak, and suddenly you're speaking with poise, and you sounded like a teacher. I was thinking, oh, Cynthia's might teach contribution training one day, because that's how you sounded. And I was so impressed, and I was so excited about, memory links coming up and it changing our behavior, even unconsciously changing our behavior. That's it.
Well, actually, one thing I noticed today, this morning, that, I mean, I can speak Japanese regardless of where I'm at sort of emotionally, but the part that doesn't speak English speaks much better. Japanese, in terms of Japanese, that I hesitate less, I struggle less, and it just comes out, and because I was doing Tamano Kaiten, internal dialogue. I was doing my internal dialogue in Japanese, and I realized when I was in that part of me, it just came out flowed. I didn't have to, you know, there's a few words, I mean, my Japanese, I still have a lot of work to do. There's some words I didn't know and stuff, but it was much, it was actually, it was kind of strange. It's like, wow, part of me speaks better than the other part in Japanese, which is wild.
Yeah, and I think to sort of generalize that point a bit, that's the relationship between communication strata and emotional strata. Okay, when I say things like that, I'm not saying that's all it is. You know, it's a sort of use of the tool. Someone else could come in and say it's something different, and that'd be fine too. But just using it as an example here, yeah, communication strata, emotional strata, and overcoming the emotional strata. And I think there's something else that goes on, that the people will try a different persona and are able to communicate much more effectively because they are trying a different persona. And that gets into, you know, a game. And, you know, instead of being, you know, homeless single mom, I'm a congresswoman, okay? I'm a congresswoman who's signing articles of impeachment against the President of the United States. I am also a single mom who has been homeless. But I think without the different role, you know, someone like Cori Bush couldn't completely find her voice. I'm, you know, I'm not saying she wouldn't find her voice if you did something else, but I think having the role, and she embraces it. She says it. I'm a congresswoman. I'm a congresswoman. I'm a congresswoman. I think it, you know, and in that place she talks like a college professor. So I think you're onto something. You know, we can almost free ourselves from some of the ways that some emotional strata is pulling us down, or some combination of emotional strata and social strata is pulling us down, or just social strata is pulling us down, and finding a different persona, which would be evaluation strata and accomplishment strata, with probably a pretty big dose of perseverance strata. You know, you are not going to take it. And when you talk about speaking Japanese, you have that. You know, you don't say it, and I'm using it as an example. But you know, no one's going to take this away from me. I've got this. It's mine. Whew. Okay. We have to be ending there for today. And yeah, let me use this title for the series starting next Sunday. It's the way I've called it in the workbook I've developed for foster carers. I call it the hard stuff. And so next Sunday will be the hard stuff 1. And if anyone wants to read it up, it's in the manual under Resistance to Nourishing Change. So that's looking ahead. And yeah, I'm in Norfolk, England, Peter. Yeah, just thank you. I got a lot of stuff out of this, sort of freed me up. Which I was looking for. I was looking for sort of, I guess I wanted to start with, okay, we're going to learn this, Strata, revision. But yeah, I did want a bit of freeing up. That's me. You want to go next, Nikki?
Nikki in Wimbledon, I had a interesting, well, this has been interesting anyway, but I had a little interesting idea at some point. I thought, wow, what an interesting little course there could be, or something like that, ongoing group. They had a group of people, and it's just a continuous round about everybody's different memory links, about any given thing at all. You could, arcade, go around, everybody say. I think it would just be so liberating. You'd only have to do it like 6 times, 8 times, 10 times. Everybody on that program would realize that just how completely different everybody is, and then you'd realize that about everybody in the world. Anyway, that was a little idea I had.
Okay.
Thank you today.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. Still in Eugene. Yeah, I enjoyed today. I think you already got to hear my excited little gush. So that's all.
Cynthia?
Cynthia, I'm in Kankakee, and yeah, this was good today. Thank you.
Mary, as we're finishing up.
Hi, I'm Mary in a boiling hot car outside my physical therapist, if I could catch the end. And I just want to say how different it feels that I put the effort in to stay connected, and I know I can watch the bit I missed. It's interesting.
Okay.
Different feeling from if I put the effort in and I could never retrieve a little bit.
Okay. Well, bye-bye for now. And here I'll see you a week. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right.
Elizabeth?